So, hi everybody, welcome. Welcome to the, I think what is the final event for this portion of the virtual parent and family orientation. My name is Aviva Zablocki.
So my brother, as an aside.
Hold on. Can everybody please mute? Or Ashley, can I ask you to mute all the participants? Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Don't worry, we want to hear your voices. We're just going to do it later. So welcome. So this final event, which we're very excited about, is an alumni and student panel. So you will be hearing from two current GS students, both named Nicholas, not to be confused, but they're both different in their own ways, and two wonderful graduates of general studies. And the idea is that we'll have an informative and engaging conversation about their experiences as GS students, both now and of course in the past. And we will be happy to take your questions. Actually, I should mention there's captioning available. There should be a button for you to request live transcript if anyone needs it. We will also, or I am recording this event. So if you want to watch it again or share it, you just ping us later and we'll do that. And we'll do maybe 25 minutes or so of conversation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Again, my name is Aviva, and I just want to thank also my colleagues, Ashley and Jill from the Alumni Relations and Development team who are with me, and of course, our alumni and students who you will meet. Jill just waved. Thank you. So I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves, but I do want to just make special note that Yasmin, the alumna who you will hear from, volunteers as a member of our GS Alumni Association board. So we're so thrilled that after she graduated, she still stayed connected to us, and she's a wonderful leader on that board, helping to plan programs and events for alumni and for students. And Rachel equally is a member of the GS Board of Visitors, a very important board to this school that partners with Dean Rosenmetsch throughout the year to lead initiatives for us. So we're so grateful that we have these alumni leaders. So for all my panelists, why don't we start with, and maybe Yasmin, if I can start with you, and I'll do some spotlighting camera work in a moment. You know, I won't read your formal bio, but do you want to just talk maybe two or 3 minutes, Yasmin, about what was the path that brought you to general studies?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm so grateful to be here and contribute as much as I can to GS. Yeah, my path is, non-traditional like most. So I'll do a brief introduction and then go into my path. My name is Yasmin Ibrahim. I'm currently living in Washington, DC, which is where I grew up. I graduated from GS in 2019, studied psychology and business management, and then after graduating, went on to work in consulting. So talking a little bit about my path, I started a career in hair and makeup when I was like 18 or 19 years old. I was not interested in going to college at all. Just, had an entrepreneurial spirit, and went up to my mom and said, "Mom, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm not going to college." She almost had a heart attack. But after convincing her for a while, she let me start my own hair makeup business. And it went really well. I didn't think it was gonna be as successful, but I just did a lot of networking, learning, had a really open.
Oh, just lost your sound, Yasmin. You want to just unmute yourself? There you are.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, just had a really open, optimistic sort of outlook. And so that business grew really well. I traveled all over the world doing hair and makeup with people from all walks of life. It was really an amazing experience. But after about doing this for 10 years or so, I started to get a little bored. I started to feel like I was doing the same thing over and over again. I wasn't really being challenged. I had hit all of the goals I had wanted to. And so I had a friend at the time who invited me to her going away party. She was moving from DC to New York. So, without knowing much, I showed up at her party and I said, "Well, where are you going and why?" She said, oh, I got into Columbia University. And this friend, you know, she's a woman of color, curly hair, also has a very non-traditional background. And I looked at her and I thought to myself, people like us can go to Columbia University, right? Like people, you know, who are, you know, of color, or maybe just didn't go to school right away. You know, that whole thought, I was astonished. And you know, I thought about it, kept in touch with her. And during this time, I was also attending Northern Virginia Community College, just kind of taking some courses, trying to keep myself, you know, busy and challenged outside of work. And after about a year or so, she said, well, have you thought about applying to Columbia? You know, you can come here too. Like, they would love you, just apply. So she mentored me, encouraged me to apply. And, you know, a year later, I moved to New York without much of a plan. Totally put my business on the side, which was hard to do. But yeah, you know, I was nervous, scared, didn't know what to expect, and ended up really having an amazing time, and kind of getting through with my fellow GSers and helping each other out and building amazing relationships with you know, my peers and professors who I still keep in touch with to this day. So it ended up being an amazing experience, and I got my job with Accenture Consulting through CCE, which is the Career Center on campus. Did all of my interviews on campus, didn't even have to leave. And here I am back at home in DC, and you know, just kind of pursuing my second career and back to being an adult.
You are an adult, Yasmin. Thank you for sharing. And Yasmin has an Emmy Award. I don't know if she mentioned that, but we're proud of everyone, no matter what awards they have. Thank you, Yasmin. And to stay with the alumni angle, maybe Rachel, could we go to you for a moment?
I personally, can you hear me? Okay. I believe that GS should have an award, and it should be the most non-traditional GSer, because the stories are unbelievable. So all of you out there, please, you know, talk to your fellow GS students. It is an amazing group of people. My name is Rachel Ticketton. I'm also in the class of, I'm from the class of 2019. I am an actress. I started as a dancer. I shouldn't have gone to college. Like, there's no reason, but it was my life was really settled in a completely different way. And at 53 years old, I decided, oh, you know what? I really always wanted to go to college. And somebody told me about the program. I applied and got in. And this time that you are all in today, it brings back so many wonderful memories of an incredible amount of excitement. It's so exciting, all of this. These classes are just fantastic. Your fellow students, your professors, the staff, everybody at Columbia. It's just, you know, it's just a wonderful thing. Anyway, I started as a dancer. I was one of the founding members of Ballet Hispanic of New York, which is a dance company in New York. And then became an actress. And I actually live in California. So I was only doing the winter and one summer term. So it took me 6 years to finally graduate. I had never gone, so I didn't come in with any credits. I have to say that I think that for those of you who do not come from New York or haven't been in New York, one of the classes that's a real it's a wonderful addition to your education is the history of the city of New York class, because you get, first of all, you get to go on field trips. So who thought you could go on a field trip in college? But you get to go on these field trips and you get to learn a lot about New York City, and that most New Yorkers don't even know. And it will really inspire you. And it kind of infuses the whole experience of being a student there, because New York, you really do understand from that class that New York was really the microcosm of the United States. This idea of all these people coming together, it happens in New York. It's very different. It's not a normal city. It's totally abnormal. And that school really gives, that class really gives you the background for it. I would really recommend that you take advantage of all of the time management assistances that they're sending you in your emails. Really do that, because time management, I was a total basket case. And all of that helped because you really do learn how to manage your time because you have to. You can't function. Everything will just sort of implode. And then actually that inspires you to do more. So yeah, that's my crazy, wacky background. I work with students at a performing arts high school in New York. I've been doing that for years. And I'm continuing to act, and Columbia has changed my life.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And you actually answered 2 of the next questions. So we'll come back to you. I love it that you're ahead about resources and time management. That's going to definitely be something we'll talk about. So let's hear from our current students. Nick Rockwood, I'm looking at you first. So is it okay if I call on you? Maybe, of course, tell us what year you're in at GS and what led you to be a student currently at Columbia GS. Thank you, Nick.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Aviva, for having me. It's a pleasure. I am an OL, and you might be able to tell I'm losing my voice a bit. So please forgive me. So yeah, I actually started on a very traditional path. I went to William and Mary right after graduating high school, and I was studying theater, and I had an opportunity to move to New York after my sophomore year. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go try New York for a little bit. And then I was here for about 15 years running a production company, mostly in the theater space, but we did projects in the music industry or with visual artists, all different kinds of things. Towards the end though, mostly theater. And that's what led me to Columbia, as I felt I'd kind of plateaued. And my initial plan was to finish my theater degree and then go on and get an MFA. That didn't happen. I ended up taking a intro to computer science class as part of our core curriculum that we have to take. Was really interested, and I said, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this new thing until I don't like it anymore. Now I'm a senior studying computer science. I just finished my internship at Goldman Sachs, where I was an engineering analyst for the summer. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. And Nick Lee, our final panelist and our other GS student.
Hi, can you hear me well enough at the moment, or?
You
is everything
sound
all right?
great. And I think you're outside on campus. Is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I was at a chair, but now I'm going to give you a little sweep around. Currently on the Amsterdam Bridge next to the law school, if I'm not mistaken. But
Beautiful.
as you can tell by the bright green shirt as well, I am also in OL today, and I kind of just had to sit under a tree to escape my tour. But anyways, nice to meet you all. My name is Nick. I guess I'm sort of unlike other GSers as well, because with me, I am the more traditional college student age. I'm currently 20 years old in my basically my 4th year of time here at Columbia, sort of, kind of. And I say sort of, kind of because I am in the dual bachelor's degree program between Sciences Po University in France and Columbia University. So basically I do 2 years of school in France to try and complete that degree. And then I come here for the next 2 years to try to complete my Columbia degree. It's quite a bit hectic. I'd say, if anything, I have 3 different majors plus a concentration. It's a lot, but it is worth it. And I guess long story short, I kind of dove head first into this. And I guess that kind of makes me a bit non-traditional. My parents are Chinese immigrants. They came when they were still teenagers and in their early 20s. And I was kind of like the kid they had here. I went to public school my entire life. And then at some point I said, you know what, I'm 17, I'm a minor, I have no connections to Europe, but might as well move to France for a couple of years to see how it goes, because otherwise I will not have the opportunity to do that. And I think it was an immensely eye-opening experience. I know that's a bit cliche, but through Sciences Po, I was able to delve into all the social sciences, explore everything from, because in our first year, it's history, economics, sociology, political science, law. I'm not sure if I mentioned economics, but also humanities. We cover the broad spectrum of things. And then sort of by the time we come back here at Columbia, we choose what we want to sort of hone in on. So currently I'm studying financial economics here at Columbia with a special concentration in business management. And although I am in financial econ, I kind of wanted to work in the education space. That's my thesis for my French schools paper anyway. But on campus, I am an OL. I do a little bit of representation work on the student council of GS, and I'm very much into the performing arts. So I'm on one of the dance teams as well. I'm a little bit everywhere. We'll see how that works next semester, but yeah, that's me. Thank you guys for attending and listening.
Excellent. So it sounds like all of you are actually creative artists in your part of your lives, which is interesting. I didn't know that when we started. And Nick just mentioned something that, GS students have always been non-traditional in their path to education, but in the last 10 years with our dual degree programs with partner universities, we have traditionally aged students now at GS who are pursuing their education on a non-traditional path because they have sort of one foot in one part of the world and one foot in another part of the world, and they're earning 2 degrees at 2 institutions. So it's a really interesting program. We're really proud of it. So let's talk about, Rachel touched on some of this. Can you talk about maybe Nick as current students, some of the most valuable resources that you know that a new student or any students should really consider taking advantage of to help support them as they're starting their time? And then of course, Rachel and Yasmin, looking back on your time here, would love to hear about what helped you as well for resources.
Yeah, I'll take the beginning part of this. So as a peer advisor, I think that's my -- resource I'll offer as a recommendation, mostly because like in my role as a peer advisor, we're trained specifically as a connector. So if someone comes to me with a logistics issue where they're having trouble finding childcare, I'm familiar with support groups for parents that are also students, for example. So I think it's just like a good jumping off point for whatever might be going on, whether it's time management or issues with a specific professor, or just in general kind of needing someone as a sounding board. But then going off of that as well, the ARC, which is also something that's unique just to general studies. Meaning it's not like the Writing Center where you have to compete with the CC and the C's kids for appointments. It's just for us, and they have most STEM topics, but also like argument tutoring for, like just coming up with a thesis for your paper. And also like reading coaching if you're having difficulty with some like, really dense reading. They have reading coaches that can help teach you not only how to like read that kind of text, but specifically help you with what you're working on at the moment. And even time management appointments. Like I said, you can go and make an appointment with a dean or with a time management expert who can help you organize your time in a sustainable way that can make it so that you can last the whole semester. So those are probably like my favorite kind of highlights. And then if anything, other students, because people perceive Columbia as a hyper competitive place, and I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think I've never encountered another student to be anything but like open, helpful, and supportive, whether that's another GSer or a Columbia College or a C's student. I've just generally been my experience. So yeah.
And thank you for mentioning ARC, Nick. We love our acronyms at Columbia, so I put that in the chat. That's the Academic Resource Center. Did I get it right? Great. And Nick, other Nick?
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what the other Nick kind of said about your peers, I really want to heavily emphasize that. And I feel like especially in the GS community, a lot of GSers especially are very understanding that sometimes, there are difficulties if you're transitioning back into the learning environment, and they are a lot more understanding and sort of empathetic to that position because they are in the exact same position. And also this might not be as relevant right now, but there is something called Jumpstart, which is offered at the beginning of every sort of semester. I'm not entirely sure if it's also available for a spring entrance, but it's kind of like this mini week-long program before orientation that gets you caught up on math, writing, and a bunch of other things. But in addition to your peers, which is what I personally found insanely, immensely like useful in every single class, I think also there are many resources at Columbia for you to independently kind of help yourself as well, because, or at least for me in the econ department, every single teacher that you go to, actually across all departments, I'm pretty sure have office hours where you are able to schedule one-on-one appointments with them to ask them about a reading, how you could do better on your essay, how can you improve your test score, how to improve study methods, and so on and so forth. For instance, unfortunately, I am not a big reader. but I enrolled in a very heavy English class that was basically reading a 1984 George Bell equivalent of a book every single week. I'm an econ major. I don't really read those kinds of things, but I took a couple minutes to talk with the professor, and she said, honestly, it is completely fine. Approach this in your own way. And she basically helped me sort of feel comfortable in that English space without having that sort of English major background. And on top of that, I think this is very understated, but TAs are a very integral part of especially the larger lecture classes, particularly in the STEM fields like comp sci, bio, orgochem, and whatnot, as well as if you are in the post-bac pre-med program. And even if you're just an econ major, math person, or in any class that's usually larger than 30 people, you'll usually have the professor as well as teachers' assistants who are students either in GS or even grad school students pursuing a PhD or a master's that will basically help you through all the material. After all, some of them are also the ones grading your problem sets. So it does not hurt to get to know them, to get a couple extra tips and tricks into dealing with some of those really tough econ problems. But the last point I really just want to hammer home is just there are plenty of resources, and all you really have to do is ask, whether it's peers, Columbia-sponsored resources, or even the alumni network that I know was pushed a lot at our OL training. I, fingers crossed, will try to use that this year. Now that COVID is, again, fingers crossed, kind of, we're moving past it. But yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Nicholas, you win a prize for mentioning the alumni relations team first. Thank you so much. Because the alumni are just ready and willing to be here and be accessible. And Yasmin and Rachel, I think, are a great example of that. Rachel, when you think back to your time as a student, which was very recently, but what were some of the resources do you think that really helped you?
Well, it's funny because with Nick's story of reading a book I was an English major, so that was like an ice cream sundae for me, those classes. But when I had to take the introduction to logic, which was to meet my quantitative reasoning requirement, it was really difficult. And I really did reach out to the TAs, and that was the class that really made me realize they were really helpful. And I basically said to them, guys, you're going to have to get me through this because I don't get this at all. And that was the hardest class I had, because it really was like it was like my brain was working in different ways. So the TAs, for sure, they can be so helpful. And really speaking to your fellow students, I have to say that I was intimidated going in as a 53-year-old. I was intimidated to ask somebody younger than me for help. And I did not ask for as much help as I should have. And so I can tell you from experience, really do ask everybody, ask your fellow students. So I started finding out about other things through the fellow students, not through the many things that come through email of there's this program and there's this thing that's available and there's this. I just was like, no, I could do this by myself. I could do it by myself. I could do it. Yeah, do it with help. It really makes a difference. So take advantage of everything that you're getting offered. That's my biggest advice.
It's great advice. And Yasmin, would you echo that?
Yeah, I definitely echo everything that the panelists have said. I will add CCE for sure. I know I briefly mentioned CCE earlier, but CCE is the Career Center. And I went to see the advisors at CCE like as soon as I got to Columbia. I was like, I know I have a very different background than what I will probably end up doing after graduating. And I wanted to make sure that I had support, with how to kind of translate everything that I did in a way that shows my transferable skills. That was something I was really worried about. I didn't know, being a hair and makeup artist, how was I going to go sell myself to, a consulting company or, at one point I was thinking about even banking, right? So CCE was just great for that. I worked with them for my very first year. I got my internship through CCE, and then I got my full-time job through CCE. So definitely highly recommend working with them. They help with everything from like prepping you for a job interview or an internship interview to helping with the cover letter, helping with resumes, just anything job related. I also learned about, I don't know if they're still doing this because of COVID, but they did have a really cool externship program where you can travel to a different country for an internship during the summer, and it's all paid for, and you get paid as well. I think you get paid like $3,000 or $4,000 for that summer. So, you know, just really keeping in touch with CCE. I learned about so many different opportunities that I didn't even know existed or were possible. So highly recommend checking in with them.
Thank you, Yasmin. Could you talk a little bit about time management and, you know, how you think a student can set themselves up for success? And of course, I invite everyone to answer this because there is so much to juggle. Of course, if you're working also and going to school, which a lot of students are. What was your experience with time management?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Honestly, I knew that we were going to talk about this, so I have my calendar next to me.
Are you referring to your notes?
Well, I always have my calendar next to me. And it's funny because that's actually a question I was asked a lot during job interviews. I was working as chief of campus life with the student council. I was resident advisor. I was an OL, an orientation leader. I still had some clients who I was working with part-time, and I was a full-time student. So knowing, you know, that I had to juggle all of these different things, I'm really old school. I will use a paper calendar. It works for me. I don't deviate. I tried to deviate, didn't work. Don't deviate anymore, stick to it. And, you know, I think for me, using a calendar is one thing, but then knowing how to actually use it and like how to space, you know, tasks out was a whole different ballgame that I learned at GS. And ARC, which was mentioned earlier, was a great kind of resource to help me with that. But it honestly, it just came down to prioritizing things, right? Just making sure like, what is it that I need to prioritize? I worked very much on like a deadline basis. So whatever that needed to get done first is what got done first. And I always made sure that I kept like 2 or 3 hours of free time every day, just in case something unexpected popped up, because it always popped up. so that would be my advice, is just like, use some sort of calendar that works for you, and know that, you know, there are going to be certain unexpected, you know, maybe assignments that may pop up. I know sometimes, like if I miss an assignment and I'm, you know, talking to a peer and they're like, oh, we have this assignment due, you know, tonight. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm thankful for my 2 hours that I kept free, right, to go ahead and try and knock this out.
Thank you, Yasmin. And for our students, Nick, has your time management or your understanding of time management changed since you've become a student? Maybe you thought you knew how to do it, but now Columbia's taught you a little bit more about what works.
Well, you know, like I said, so I ran a production company, and I'm mostly just grateful I only have to manage my time now. But that being said, I really agree with everything Yasmin said. I think for me, what works is a Google Calendar. So I get updates on all my, there's a TikTok about it where all your devices kind of go and like give you an alert. And I find that to be useful. And mine is extremely robust, kind of what I'm getting, the vibe Yasmin's is robust too. And I do schedule time where it just says no, you know, and I'll just write no, and I'll schedule naps. And people look at my schedule and think it's insane. But the way I look at it is sort of like firm suggestions about what I'm supposed to be doing throughout the day. So if I follow it 75%, I'm 75% in the right direction. Another thing though, when your schedule is set, and we will talk about this with the new students, but when you have your syllabi that you know, these are the classes I'm taking, go through them and put every single, not every major, every single assignment and its due date in your calendar so that there are no surprises, so that you don't get, you know, to October and go, oh my gosh, I have 3 midterms and a paper due in 1 week, and you sort of only realize it the week before. You want to go into that situation with your eyes wide open and maybe adjust your class schedule accordingly. But yeah, calendar, calendar, calendar.
It's the word of the day. And Nick Lee, I know you had.
So unfortunately, I guess I do not have a robust calendar that I use. Personally, I have tried that. Did not work at all. Too many things kept on popping up. And I think the point that I want to sort of bring up is that everyone has their own very unique time management schedule. And I feel like it is okay to kind of, especially like your first week of school anyway is shopping week. You will be shopping around for classes. And I think it's also a really great time to, in a sense, shop around for different time management methods. Some people I know are morning people, some are night people. I am a night person. And as much as I want to work on that CEO schedule, wake up at 4 a.m., go on a run, have breakfast, make an acai bowl or a smoothie, and then like head off at my day at 8 a.m., I just cannot do it. So what sort of works for me is almost getting into a rhythm or routine as well. Like the previous panelist mentioned, that you do have syllabi at the beginning of the year, and most teachers, or at least in my experience in the econ department and even in the math and even English department, they have a routine sort of due date in a sense. So for one class, all of my problem sets were always due Sunday, 11:59 p.m. For another class, it was always due on Tuesday at 10 p.m. And because of that, I was able to basically just, in a sense, without a calendar, get into that same sort of routine, just because I knew, okay, I need 6 hours for this econ problem set, and it's due this day, I'll just do it then. And then every single day at that time and that period will just be econ problem set time. And another thing I want to mention is that, unfortunately, you will have to prioritize things. Not everyone can be everywhere and do everything at the same time. And I think burnout is a very real thing that you should be aware of. It is great if you can do everything, but you absolutely do not need to force yourself to do everything. I am personally, like, it is advice that I am trying to give to myself, because I am very guilty of this, trying to do everything and anything. And I've learned the hard way that is impossible. If anything, it is really bad to overpromise and underdeliver, then vice versa. But basically, there are things you will have to prioritize. Sometimes you will not be able to go out with friends to get lunch because you do have to study for a test. Sometimes you will not be able to go out on like a ski trip on vacation because you have to work. And honestly, especially as a GSer, that is perfectly fine. We have completely different situations, especially from the traditional CCCs and Barnard students, and it is perfectly okay to not like feel the need to be social all the time. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be social, of course. Developing those networks is extremely crucial, but learning how to prioritize and maybe in a sense squeeze socializing into your work study schedule is really nice. A thing I learned in France is, especially around midterm season, and even at Columbia, there is revisions week. So we didn't really have a revisions week over the summer, but you can maybe organize a point where you and all your friends in the same class meet up, and instead of, I don't know, going out bar hopping or having a dinner, you order takeout and you study together. That way you can still see each other and still be productive. And it's just these little things of prioritization, finding your own niche, and also just finding your own tips and tricks that work especially for you, and not doing everything at once. That has at least personally worked for me, just because I know that is the type of person I am. I will try to do everything, but I know I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and that is it. And that is perfectly fine. At least in my opinion, it is. So yeah.
It's great life advice. And I hear in there also like this understanding that students should be forgiving, of themselves, that mental health and just feeling calm is obviously a huge priority when juggling all of these stresses. And I think that kind of reminder that, it's hard to do it all and be all, to pace yourself. And I'm sure for the people in the audience, tell your loved ones it's okay to pace yourself. And just a quick note, Dean Rosenmetch joined our audience. So I just want to say, hi, Dean Rosenmetch. Welcome. So nice to see you. And Rachel, did you want to add anything about time management? And then I'll wrap it up probably with one more question before we go to the audience.
I developed one mantra, and this was not to help me with my schoolwork. This was really to help me with my life, which was if it takes under 5 minutes, do it now. It changed my life. Because there's so many things that, you go, oh, like, okay, whatever. And it was like, if it's under 5 minutes, do it now, get it done, move on, do the school time management, classwork, time management was a different thing. But the life one is also, you have to balance that as well. There's so many details, so many things you have to take care of. So that was very helpful. I still use it.
Excellent life advice. So Rachel, you mentioned before, I know your favorite course, right, was the history of New York City.
Yeah.
Did you have
Yeah.
one of your favorites? So maybe just anybody want to jump in also? And Rachel, if you have another favorite professor or recommended class that you think people, students should really, to get a great sort of taste of something special that you recommend? Was that your top class?
I would say that would be the top one because you're in New York. It really does give you a different understanding of the place that you're in. And it actually makes you think, like it gives you the training of the critical thinking that Columbia trains you for, because you're in a space and you're looking and researching about the space you're in. And so from then on in, no matter where you go, wherever you travel, you will always be doing the same thing. You'll be like, wait a minute, what is the population of this place? What are the major imports? What are the, when was this town founded? You start doing that and you're just, and it's a good way of thinking. It's a great class. It
was the history of New York City? Is that what it's called, Rachel?
New York City, but that was with Professor Kenneth Jackson. I don't think he's teaching anymore. And you end the class by going on a bike ride at midnight from Columbia through Manhattan down to Brooklyn. It's just an incredible,
What a gift.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It was a show and a class all in one.
Yasmin, favorite class or professor you would recommend students try to take advantage of?
Well, I wish I had taken that class.
You can audit it.
I might need to. I would say the one class that I probably dreaded the most, but ended up absolutely loving, and it's absolutely my favorite class, was the university writing class. I took it with Professor Glenn Gordon, who I'm not sure if he's still teaching it, but I think now he's like the director of the undergraduate writing program. But he was absolutely amazing. And that class was so challenging. I mean, I was talking about wanting a challenge earlier. I remember crying for my entire first weekend because I didn't know how to do the first assignment. And utilizing office hours, TAs, all of that really helped. But I think overall that was probably my favorite class because number one, I don't know if they're still doing it, but at least when I took it, it was limited to 12 people, right? So it was like just a super small, intimate setting where you're really collaborating, learning a ton from the professor. We did a lot of like workshop hours during that class where we helped edit each other's papers. And I honestly just learned how to write really well in that class. Professor Gordon wouldn't let anyone finish the class without being an exceptional writer. So it's something that I feel like I can take into anything I'm doing, right? Whether it's like writing an email or, writing like grad school applications, which I kind of dabbled into, right? That skill is just, I think, extremely useful. So, yeah.
And you addressed, Yasmin, one of the last questions. I was just thinking about what the GS and Columbia experience gives you that you take out into the world. And obviously, you can apply to everything. And I know that becoming a strong writer, everybody talks about and how that applies across the board. Thank you. Nick Rockwood? Well, let's see, you're still a current student, but what have you loved so far? What would you recommend?
I don't know, I have to say two, because I don't know, one, my intro to Java class, just because it was the first class that sort of opened my eyes to a whole different part of myself. And I think a lot of people experience that at Columbia, not necessarily from a playwright to a computer scientist, but in some way they discover this whole new area of interest. But there's this another class I took as part of our global core requirement was a colloquium on East Asian texts. And I'd never taken a colloquia. I didn't even know what that really was. So I was unaware. Essentially what it means is it's kind of Socratic, but the students teach each other. So every week we would take turns kind of leading the class discussion. And it was a really small class. And our final at the end of the class was an oral final where it was one-on-one with the professor. And he would just ask you questions like about one of the texts, and it was just a casual 30-minute conversation, which was nerve-wracking. However, it's kind of what Aviva was saying, is that I engaged with the text in such a meaningful and deep way. Yeah, I wrote some papers, but I could also, go out to dinner and have a conversation about something that I knew nothing, 0% about before. Which is, part of what makes Columbia so amazing, is you have these experiences that are frightening as you're doing them, but then at the end you sort of go, oh my gosh, like I learned this, I deeply learned something that I knew nothing about. So yeah, so I had to say 2, sorry.
Oh, that's great. And Nick, Lee?
I do not think that there's a very easy answer for me, especially because I've only had a singular year at Columbia thus far. But I have a
That's
blanket
okay.
answer and then some specific ones. But I think as long as you do your research, if that makes sense, into professors, you will definitely like any class that you take. I think it is very nice that Columbia is relatively transparent. There are many resources, both official and unofficial, to look into your different professors, whether it's unofficial things like Rate My Professor and Culpa, or the official Virgil. You are able to access descriptions of what you learn in this professor's class. What is their workload like? And all of that to see what they prioritize and if that fits, let's say, your learning style or what you want to get out of that class. Because not all Calculus 1 classes are taught the same way. Not all Intro to Psych classes are taught the same way. And I think that's a very useful tip, especially if your family members are going into this sort of shopping period coming up quite soon. But in regards to my personal favorite classes, I have, I guess, one set that I really want to bring up. It's almost this trifecta of classes. One was Music Hum with Dr. Magdalena Stern-Bachevska, and then Art History or Art of China, Japan, and Korea with Naomi Kuromiya, and then Modernism, Struggle, and Utopia with one of the professors of the English department. And I personally love the humanities classes, although they were needed because of the core. It was a way for me to connect with my late grandfather, who was a musician. And he basically was an artist during the Cultural Revolution and came here. And I grew up very Americanized, so I was very disconnected from all of that stuff. But that was a way for me to connect with his side of music, especially like violin and piano music. And even the art class, even though it's of China, Japan, and Korea, and of all the periods, I had a better understanding of what his sort of living was, in a sense, and what art meant to him and to my family that I, as an American-born Chinese, am somewhat removed from. So those 2 classes have like a very personal touch for me. But also the teachers were great. Like Dr. Bachevska played on the harpsichord and piano to like teach us Carmen. And Naomi Kuromiya was just amazing. And I was able to do like a final report on Japanese pop art. But the Modernism, Struggle, and Utopia class was the English class that I mentioned that I struggled in because it sounds bad, but I don't read. I don't read those types of dystopian fiction books or dystopian nonfiction, but I ended up learning a lot from that class by combining it with my Intro to Psych class. And my final paper was, what is the definition of Orwellian, especially in the context of last year's political climate and everyone throwing that term willy-nilly, like this is Orwellian, that is Orwellian. And then realizing that Orwell's understanding of the human experience and human thought processes from an author's perspective kind of preceded everything psychologists were saying after anyways. So it was really interesting to see that bridge between a normal Intro to Psych class that everyone at Columbia almost takes if they don't go into like bio or anything, and then this English class that is completely out of my personal purview. I think that interdisciplinary nature is very unique to the core, and I know this is like kind of cliche, but I think that it is amazing just for personal growth and critical like thinking and understanding. And even if I don't become like a 6-figure consultant out of college, I'm perfectly content with having GS completely reshape my worldview and understanding of things and the way that I approach problems and things in this monumentally different way that I do not think I could get anywhere else. kind of cheesy, but that is my answer. Thank you. Sorry, it was a bit
No,
long.
I think it's profound. If best case scenario is what you get out of a college education is to think differently and see things differently. I mean, I'm sold. I'll enroll. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. We have a question in the chat, Nick, that's actually for you because it's from Carol
Oh,
from
okay.
Paris.
Hello.
So Carol has a child who is in the Sciences Po program, and she's asking, and I'm sure there's an answer here, about time management at Columbia versus at Sciences Po, the partner university.
Yeah.
So her child would have just done 2 years there in France and now is coming into GS in New York. So can you talk about your experience?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really complicated question. And while I was working with the visitor center, this would be like an entire hour-long discussion, but I will try to keep it as short as possible. In terms of raw class hours, Sciences Po, at least on my personal schedule, I had anywhere between 20 to 28 hours of in-person sitting class a week. And at Columbia, especially if you have 4 or 5 classes, these classes are 1 hour, 15 minutes to 2 hours at max, maybe once or twice a week. At Sciences Po, these classes are in 2-hour blocks and basically take up almost like a high school schedule of like 8 a.m. to maybe 9 p.m. at night with a couple breaks in between. So the learning styles are very different, and I feel like Columbia is a lot more independent because you have less of that in-class time. You are left, especially in most departments, in a sense, to your own devices. You are supposed to engage with these texts in your own way and seek help if you need it. There's a lot less hand-holding, and I don't mean to like bash Sciences Po with their learning system because I personally loved it. I thought it was super efficient because they kind of like guided you through each step of the process instead of throwing you in. But there is this big switch in time management because you go from spending nearly 30 hours in a class to 15 or less. And especially if it's computer science, I think the other Nick can answer a lot more about the computer science department here, but I know it is tough, it is rigorous, and it is very different from Sciences Po because that is a social science school. So you will have computer science like projects, you will have coding, you'll have GitHub things to deal with. And I mean, if Nick can help with that, since I'm just an econ major, but yeah.
Sure. I mean, kind of the same. It really depends on what she's taking or they're taking this semester, because the first part of the major is pretty linear. You can't take more than, or you shouldn't really take more than one, like intro, data structures, then advanced programming. So it sort of depends how she's coming in. That being said, if you're only given 2 years to do it, I was originally just supposed to do 2 years. It's why I did 3. Because it was just, I didn't want to lose my mind because taking 3 STEM classes, technology or engineering or math classes in a semester, it's kind of a red flag for be careful. And if you do it in 2 years, most of your semesters will be that way. That being said, that's just my kind of style of taking and registering for classes. There are many, many students who are very successful that take all engineering classes every semester. Again, not for me. That being said, in about a week or so, we're going to post our peer advising walk-in and office hours, and I'd be more than happy to talk specifically about her schedule. Tell her to just Google Columbia University peer advisors, general studies, and I'm the computer science major, and we can have a more in-depth conversation before she's kind of like committed to a schedule. I'm sure she's going to do great though.
Thank you, Nick, for
Merci
offering
beaucoup.
support. Thank you. Yes, you got a merci beaucoup, Nick. Thank you. And academic advisors, of course, are there to help your student. And then they have these peer advisors, and there is a lot of support. Will in the audience has a great question about a student looking for part-time work. And I guess that would be, I'm sure all of you could answer, is CCE a place you would be looking for that? Or are there other resources that people would advise if someone's looking for a part-time job while they're in school?
Yeah, I would definitely say CCE is one. Another thing is if the student is really passionate about their major, they could check in with their usually each department has like an office and administrative assistant who can help. And a lot of times they'll have like a job posting for, we need someone to come help for 20 hours a week or 15 hours a week, or, this professor may need someone to help with editing his book or something like that. Or there are always all different types of like, you know, really interesting opportunities that, again, I would have never thought existed, working within the department or with different professors. So I would say CCE and then checking in with the different departments.
I was muted, sorry. Any other panelists want to chime in about looking for part-time work?
I think in my experience, I think your son would have to determine how exactly that part-time work fits and slots into their like academic schedule. And it depends really on what classes they're taking and how they feel. If they are taking a really heavy class load, I know some of my friends did 21 credits. I don't know how they did that. I might have to do close to 18 this semester, but personally, I could not do like, let's say a part-time job that was 20 hours a week. So for me, I work with the visitor center, giving tours and answering emails to prospective students. And that gives me the flexibility to kind of just do a little bit of work and chip in whenever I can. So it really easily slots into my schedule and gives me a little bit of extra income on the side. I know it's not gonna pay the entire rent and tuition, but it's definitely better than nothing. But there are also other jobs like library campus jobs that are more intensive, 10 to 15 hours a week. And there are definitely job postings, whether your son is into, let's say, biomedical engineering, and they can just sign up to be a lab assistant and make, let's say, 25 bucks an hour if they apply and get accepted. There are also plenty of like cafes and whatnot around campus if you want to find a part-time job in that sort of sense. So there are both on and off campus jobs, and also plenty of babysitting and like tutoring jobs, especially for foreign language. If your son is capable of like speaking French or Spanish or something else, and also teaching English, that is definitely something that is an option as well. But it really depends on what that person's schedule looks like and what they are willing to take on, and like how they manage that part-time work academic balance.
All great advice. Thank you, Nick. Anything else from the panelists on job hunting? I think we covered a lot of it. I'll give a plug as well. The alumni relations team at GS offers office hours. It's free. It can be done anytime with my colleague Ashley. And that means if there's a company that a student is interested in connecting with, or a particular industry, just like there are academic advisors who have office hours, the alumni relations team has office hours. And we are happy to try to identify a fellow GS alum who works in a particular office or a field who can really informally help advise a student to follow the path they're interested in. And we're really happy to do that. gsalumni@columbia.edu. Such an easy email address. I recommend everyone to use it. And the students will get that information in weekly emails. Really, the alumni programs are all promoted to students as well. So your student will learn about that. I saw, oh, Wilson, thank you. If any other questions, we just have like a last 2 or 3 minutes. If there are any other questions in the audience. And we are definitely recording this session and all of the sessions before this. So if there's something that somebody missed, or you have, you want to share any of this, we're happy to share the program with all of you. Oh, I should ask our panelists, best advice you would like to give for new students at Columbia. That's usually like our final gem that we like to share. Advice for a great year.
Don't let your fear stop you,
Love it.
because everybody's afraid, but just don't let it stop
Yes.
you.
Perfect, Rachel. Yasmin, Nick, and Nick?
Yeah, I would just say embrace the opportunities and the experiences that you have there. Make friendships and, just explore the campus. It's absolutely beautiful. I miss that campus so much. I mean, yeah, Nick is giving us a tour right now.
Thank you, Nick.
But yeah, it's a beautiful campus. I found it to be an amazing experience, completely reshaped how I just view life and live my life. And I've become so much more intentional with everything that I do because of my time at Columbia. So yeah, just enjoy it. And to Rachel's point, we're going to be afraid anyway, right? So just work through the fear and see what's on the other side.
Thank you, Yasmin. And Nick?
Yeah, I'd really echo that sentiment. I think it's really easy to get caught up in this like imposter syndrome. And the more people talk about it, the more you're like, oh, I have that. And looking back now, it's just such a silly waste of energy. There are so many other places that need that energy. And to echo what they said, though, like, you're here. Who cares how or why? Just like live in it, be in it, jump, and then build your wings like as you're falling, because there are enough resources to help you figure that out. And so really seize the opportunity, because the more you kind of spend in your head about that, the more, I wish that I had come into myself sooner here, because I feel like I lost time. So yeah, just, you belong here. So it's going to be fine.
It's perfect. Great advice.
That was very well said. I completely agree with that, because I'm still in that process of finding myself. I am only 20 years old, to be fair. I still have a lot to learn and a lot to sort of grow into, but I think something that I'm trying to, like, I give this advice, but I'm trying to keep it for myself as well, and like develop it and actually, speak it into reality. But don't be afraid to ask, like Rachel and just Yasmin and Nick has said, like, everyone else is in the same, if not like a similar situation. Everyone else is asking for help. So it is completely fine if you do too. And also, I think this is just coming from my background as well. There is no need to be hyper competitive and compare yourself to others. I think that is extremely detrimental, because everyone has their own time, their own pace, and all of that. And you don't have to follow in the footsteps of everyone else. Define your own version of success, and that is completely fine. You might just take longer or shorter, but at the end of the day, one of the other OL said this, it really is just a matter of time before it happens. And if anything, it's kind of cliche, but like, trust the process. But yeah, there is a lot for you to do and a lot for you to see and a lot for you to sort of grow into. And that is perfectly fine. You don't have to compare yourself to other people getting all these high figure internships, because they're just, at the end of the day, like 1 in 7 billion, and you are another 1 in 7 billion, and you have your own problems to deal with. There is no point in you comparing yourself to someone else, because all you're seeing is their best side. So there's no point in doing that. And I think I'm trying my best to adopt that mentality and sort of forge my own path forward. And it is difficult, but it definitely is possible. So just surround yourself with good people, and just kind of like Rachel said, have that mantra. Just repeat it to yourself, and hopefully one day it'll be true, or it'll gradually develop over time, and that's perfectly fine.
Dean Rosenmetch, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just, I'm going to speak as an alumna of the school rather than the dean. And
Sure.
One thing for me, and it really still holds today, some of the relationships I made with the faculty were so important throughout my whole career. I was a sociology major. I'm a sociologist now. I worked on the AIDS epidemic and when I was a student decades ago, and it still has stayed with me. And I would, for all the parents, and if we have any students, I would encourage them to, to really try to make some meaningful relationships. It will be helpful for recommendations. It will be helpful, and it just enriches your life. And we never know where our paths and where things are going to take us. So I would take advantage of every moment. The time is precious and magical here.
Thank you, Dean Rosenmetch. And I think I can speak on behalf of the staff also. I think we feel lucky to work here, and we all believe in the mission. And, we hope that your students will soon realize that it's definitely a welcoming place, and you can just be who you are and who you want to be. And I love that message of, just take it day at a time and be kind to yourself. Everybody's figuring it out. So thank you so much to our alumni and our students for participating. It's so valuable. But thank you also to the families and the parents and the loved ones of students, because it's your support and your care and your time that helped get students to where they are today. So we know that and you're a very valuable part of the community. So we hope to see you again soon. And that's it. So thank you on behalf of the Alumni Relations and Development team. And I'm wishing everybody a healthy week. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.